This is going to be, I can't believe it's not Magick. Technocratic Union Mage Lore by TheBurgerkrieg. This has been recommended to me a bunch today, and since it won the chat, well, the new thing YouTube is doing for goals, we're going to do it. Let's see what we're getting into here. Also, is he talking into a sock ice cream cone? Oh, he has Mistborn behind him. I already respect him. Nice.
Mage the Ascension is a pen and paper RPG about being a plucky magician who defies the dark realities of the world by sheer force of will. I already made a video on like the good guys from that setting, the 9 mystic traditions that span from the wand swishing type wizard to the LSD taking type wizard. So today I'm going to be talking about the bad guys who are evil and they hate magic because the good characters use it. In Momo and the Grey Men, these are the Grey Men who are just, they're bad people and they're jealous of magic and that's why they want to destroy it. Meet Google Drive. I mean the Technocracy.
Oh, he's going to do that kind of humor. I like it.
Sure that maybe they do study magic for the purposes of like understanding it, researching it, and maybe they do classify the laws of the universe based on like a complex metaphysical system that includes analogous concepts to the 9 spheres of magic. But they just do that to like understand how magic works. They don't call them like weird mystical names like, oh, the spirit sphere. What a ridiculous concept. It's dimensional science. And yeah, sure, maybe they do use the understanding that they have of those spheres that aren't really spheres of magic to sometimes make things.
So their entire thing, oh, I just realized he has, Leviathan Wake series down there, and Jim Butcher? Dude, the guy has great taste in books. I got distracted by books. So he's basically describing the Technocracy as, we've got magic at home. Yeah, that makes sense.
Things happen that ordinarily wouldn't happen. But that isn't magic, it's science. It's enlightened science, in fact, which is regular science, but gooder. And sure, maybe each of them is also in contact with some sort of entity that guides them on their path to greater mastery over enlightened science. And maybe those entities sometimes have like strange and deeply symbolic sort of, ways of popping into the worlds of these people, sometimes even mystical ones like dragons and fairies. Highly depends on the individual. Might also be a phone call voice that calls you sometimes. But those are not avatars or some other strange notion of like there being a divine shard that exists within all people, but only mages are attuned to it, and that's the defining characteristic that helps them bend reality to their will. That's just your genius. It's like a subconscious manifestation of your ideal enlightened self, and theoretically like everyone has the ability to get a genius, but you are attuned to it, and that's what makes you enlightened. And
so the bad guys are literally just either mages in denial or essentially any sufficiently explained magic becomes science. Yeah, that quote seems accurate.
of course, it's going to look strange and idiosyncratic.
Girl
it comes
genius
from
indeed.
Your subconscious. There's nothing magical about that. And maybe, yeah, the genius does take you along a certain path that has steps, and you sometimes fall into maybe a sort of trance-like state, or like an introverted phase where you try to attain a greater level of power. But that's not
Sounds
the
like
same
cultivators.
thing as what superstitionists call arete. It's simply the amount of enlightenment that you are, and the more enlightenment that you
Why
are,
is he
the
talking to
more
a
you
sock, though?
happen to understand reality and how to, change it around because you're enlightened. But that doesn't mean that technocrats are the same as mages. In fact, that's really an unmutual thing of you to say right there, my friend. You should stop saying that, or I might have to report you to our supervisor, for your own good. So if you haven't caught on yet, technocrats are in fact, like mechanically speaking on a meta level, but also in-universe mages. They are humans that have attained the understanding that reality is a fundamentally malleable illusion. And the deeper their understanding of that fact, the more adept they become at shaping the malleable aspects of that illusion.
I really, truly want to see someone try and use hologram theory with a Technocratic Union character just to see how fucked up they can make someone's understanding of reality.
Except, of course, that this is the precise point where tradition mages and technocrats diverge. Technocrats may not call it magic, but they do use magic, and they do it responsibly, because they believe that breaking the laws of nature is reality deviance, and reality deviance is evil. But let's start at the beginning, eh? Reality, the, thing that you perceive around yourself, is shaped by consensus. We went over this in my original Mage video, but basically consensus is a complex set of rules that describes the things that the people who are in a certain area believe to be possible. And what people believe to be possible is not the same everywhere. Not just different cultures and large geographic regions have different beliefs about reality. Where you are within your own city, things might just feel different there. Receiving actionable information on how the future of a given person might play out from, like, a crystal ball, that might not work in a high-tech computer lab, but in the tent of a fortune teller? Conversely, calculating the...
I mean, if they want to be pedantic, all they need to do is just say something like, hey, do you know how we read the future? We put all the information into a high-tech computer and it spits out the same information on a crystal. High-tech, though.
The
I see where the joke is
certain
coming.
future events might be possible with that kind of computing power. If you've ever been in like a high-tech computer lab, sometimes you feel that things are more advanced here than they are just outside the door. Whereas with a crystal ball, of course you can't do that kind of shit. It's a crystal ball.
God,
Both of these effects are
It's
magic,
so over the
and they
top.
are actually also the same effect. They're a time, maybe an entropy effect. They're just achieved through different means based on the places that they are in and the consensus that is predominant in those places. An awakened individual can defy consensus and manifest whatever they wanted to manifest anyway, but it is always easier to work with consensus than against it. And so, ever since the very beginning of Magick, mages have tried to shape their local consensus to suit their preferences, and to stymie the attempts of any mages that might disagree with their particular worldview. Thus, for thousands of years, reality was a patchwork where different things were true in different parts of the world.
These are the evil guys? Because I'll be honest, despite the intentional delusion of it, the alternative sounds kind of horrible, so I could see this being the bad guys situationally. That's probably why everyone in the chat is saying they're evil, but not evil. They're more like mundane evil, but intentionally mundane because of it.
1,000 years ago, there really were portals to the fairy realms all over Ireland. Mayan blood sacrifices to gods really did make for a better maize crop. And following the advice of an onmyoji to, rearrange the way your bed stands in your bed,
He intentionally desynced the audio when he talked about the Amioji.
bedroom would truly have changed your fortunes in
Just a little.
period Japan. There were also basilisks and dragons and terrible fucking demons that would drink your spinal fluid. Magellan really
Yeah, they're
did
still around.
meet giants in Patagonia. And all that actually kinda sucks. Not the meeting giants in Patagonia bit specifically, that sounds kinda fucking cool.
Yeah.
But to just go outside the house and see some sort of beautiful woman and then she transforms into a giant spider and eats me, having some fucking demonic spirits sit on my
Sounds like someone's Friday night.
chest at night and just torture me, having my
Sounds like every other cat.
actual literal head explode because I heard a weird cry in the woods.
Christmas Mariah Carey, you know what I mean.
It's not a good time. It's just not good to be in an existence that is like this. And I'm not even at the part where some, wizard cuts me up for parts because he's trying to make his dick bigger. Let's face it, for most of history, for most people, reality has been kind of a raw deal. And throughout all of that history, there have been some among the awakened magical population who have thought to themselves, hang on a second, what the fuck are we, doing? From an ethical perspective, what are we doing manipulating all these people as treating them as tools? to make things for our own personal advancement, usually while patting ourselves on the back for how well we're protecting them.
Hi, welcome to every leadership style in the Dark Ages.
From the monsters that we make them believe in. The world should be predictable to most people. Like, it shouldn't just be that you, because you're awakened, you can use that power to dominate everything. That's fucked up. Being awakened doesn't, like, entitle you to take advantage of everyone who isn't. That line of thinking is what led to the technocracy as we know it today. The purpose of the technocracy is to basically be the antithesis to the world of darkness. It's like,
I love how it definitely has the vibe of the technocracy are the bad guys, but as they went, they're kind of the good guys, it sounds like. And I don't think that was intentional, but it kind of is what they seem to have fallen into. I'm assuming with their basic fiction, they were eventually written to be mustache-twirlingly evil to make up for the fact that they're kind of right.
Like, the characters of this grimdark universe realized that they were in a grimdark universe and were like, no. In this setting, where supernatural horrors lurk behind every street corner, the technocracy's mission is to protect people from these dangers and to create a stable, globalized society where regular people can lead good lives without having to worry about vampires, witches, and spirits. And to do this, they must create a unified, worldwide consensus, one where all the rules are the same everywhere. And those rules need to be based in science, reason, not any arbitrary bullshit, so everyone can access the achievements of enlightened science. At that point, is it really magic at all anymore? And in order to achieve this, the world must be cleansed of reality deviance, so that one day, when the technocratic mission is fulfilled, all the world can live in a perfect utopia. If we want to refer to the title of the game,
Yeah, and there's the problem with it. Everyone who's ever tried to go for utopia has made it worse, both in fiction and even worse in reality. Looking at you, every cult out there.
that we're playing Mage the Ascension, this is the Ascension bit we're talking about. That's the Ascension Wars aspect, the disagreements on how Ascension is to be achieved. The traditions say that Ascension is every mage's personal journey to godhood. And quite frankly, because in theory anyone can become enlightened, anyone can awaken as a mage, it's fair. Well, I mean, unless you're like a vampire or some other creature that has suffered Gilgul and has been utterly, you know, divorced from its own avatar. The Technocracy, on the other hand, says that Ascension, without taking the rest of humanity along for the ride, is actually selfish and, like, pointless. If you're sitting there right now saying, Technocracy, more like Tech-yescracy, these guys do sound like they're actually the good guys, yeah, you just keep on listening.
I'm assuming this is now followed by the, okay, now we have to prove they're the bad guys still part.
The simplified story of how the Technocracy was founded is that it came out of the Order of Reason, which was already an organization made up of several other organizations that was formed around the 14th century. One of the organizations that made up the Order of Reason, by the way, used to be the Inquisition. The people used to burn witches at the stake. Although the other half of the Inquisition was made of mages of the
who were being burned
Celestial
at the stake.
Chorus, who just wanted to get rid of their rivals. The modern Technocratic Union was formed when several high-ranking members of the Order of Reason, among other organizations with similar ideological goals, approached Queen Victoria herself with their vision of a unified world free from the dangers of the supernatural.
Okay, I gotta ask, is anyone else noticing a random desync every now and again when he does different audio sounds?
Where common people could live in peace and prosperity.
Maybe it's just
thanks to all the marvels that technology would continue to deliver. And Queen Victoria said, yeah, cool, bruh, I got a whole police force that's already kind of doing a lot of that. And also, my husband used to be one of you. Like, what the fuck did you think I didn't know about all this shit? So my guys are gonna hook up with your guys, and this is, like, not really a request. I'm the most powerful person on the planet right now. I got sunlight on my empire right now. What are you gonna fucking do? Say no, you little bitch-ass motherfuckers? And then the great old men said, chill, bitch. We weren't gonna say no. That fucking rules. That's a great idea. Let's do it. It was in Victorian times, so people used to talk different back then. And don't worry,
Yeah, but they would probably say the exact same meaning as what he just said, just with flowery language, to also mean chill, bitch. They just said fancy, but with the same exact intent.
Do this joke every time that I do it, and it is never funny. And thus, the Technocratic Union
You ain't wrong,
was
though.
born. It's a very Eurocentric way of telling the story, but it is, like, not wrong. The Technocracy, as such, was founded in London. But it was also built on the work and paradigms of various scientifically minded mages that existed throughout different cultures throughout history. And as it sort of, went on ahead to take control of the whole world, cabals of those mages distributed all over the world would join them. Often, not necessarily voluntarily, if you catch my drift, because
Shocking.
maybe they had very different ideas of what science actually should fucking be. Because
It does make the idea of I was going to make a joke about how, oh yeah, so the fight between a universal theory and chaos theory is probably legitimate here. Then I realized, oh no, wait, it's probably actually a legitimate disagreement that people have literally fought over. Huh.
yeah, the technocracy was like extremely, colonialist and culturally supremacist.
I mean, they
As
were
one
from London.
would have to be, I suppose, to like go ahead and say, look, I know the one way that reality should be that would work best
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. They're from London. That actually kind of tracks.
for everyone that could possibly exist anywhere in the world. Technocracy used to be really fucking racist. Like, they would bring along their ideology of secularism alongside colonizers in an effort to create a truly unified reality that would work for everyone. They upended the realities that hundreds of millions of people knew and were comfortable with and replaced them with a reality that was alien to those people. This was reflected in their organizational structure as well, where by and large affluent Europeans were in charge, with a few notable exceptions. It wasn't as sexist as you might expect, because not only was the main founder of the organization a woman, it's also like
Queen Victoria.
the fact that women are just as likely to achieve enlightenment and awakening as mages, as men, has been a begrudgingly established fact in the magical community since forever. Still was kind of sexist though. And on fairness, this is none of these things were things that didn't also happen in the traditions. It's not like, the colonialist technocracy. No, the Hermetics have their own history of genocide. But in recent decades,
So in other words, everyone's horrible, but also could be good. Yeah, that kind of actually tracks. I kind of like that way to interpret it.
Technocracy has begun to understand that it actually turns out to be a huge waste of operatives and allies and intelligence to discriminate systemically against people with different ethnicities or different, sexual or gender orientations. It may only really have been the dimensional anomaly that allowed the technocracy to actually restructure itself to being a lot less wasteful and embracing people.
Is he talking about Old World to New World of Darkness? I don't know nearly enough to even understand if that's the context he's talking about.
That were different and not just deeply conformist, because people who have different perspectives and different skill sets, actually they're very good at contributing to the kind of complex problems that the technocracy tackles all the time. So they provide shit like no questions asked, full hypertech, gender affirming surgeries, whether you fall into any kind of binary, non-binary matrix, whatever. Although of course if you go hog wild and come up with some new sex organs and have those installed on you, the technocracy can do it, but it's gonna be a problem for you because consensus is not gonna like it, just as if you walked around town with a cybernetic arm that can shoot laser beams. This
Okay, unironically, that kind of sounds awesome.
recent liberalization, by the way, does not in any way mean that they are ready to embrace reality deviance, though. They are pretty rigid about that, and if anything, this whole change has made them a bit more self-righteous. But hang on,
We're the good guys.
You said dimensional anomaly. What is that? You can't just gloss over that. Yeah, so
he actually is
here's
getting
where
to it?
things get a little more complicated on a meta level. The dimensional anomaly, known to tradition mages as the Avatar Storm, is sort of a magical hurricane that is raging in the folds of between the real world and like the outer dimensional realms. Oversimplifying it massively, it's a storm that is raging within your walls and also your doorframe, and also kind of outside of it in the Umbra realms, all the different kinds of Umbra realms that exist, but very inconsistently there. Basically, a bunch of shit in the Umbra has been devastated, and it's become very difficult to access a lot of the parallel dimensions that the Mage setting relies on. And it came about like this. In 1999, Xerxes Jones, which is a killer name, to be honest, a technocrat, void engineer, member of the Orphic Circle, which is an organization made up of vampires, wraiths, and mages that are trying to figure out the true nature of death, pulled a...
I'm sorry, they got mages and vampires to work together. Considering which vampires would probably be the most able to contribute to that, oh my.
Lot of strings in order to be able to build a nuclear bomb that would be a nuclear bomb that functioned like a nuclear bomb in the underworld. He wanted to see how it would affect the Tempest, which is like...
Sometimes the setting sounds really interesting. Other times I'm like, yeah, I can see why this is kind of as ridiculous as 40K sometimes and how over the top it can get. Hi, we're going to find out what death is like. Let's bomb hell or the underworld with a nuke. Sure, that sounds like a great idea.
An ever-present margarine version of the dimensional anomaly that rages in the underworld. But also maybe he was trying to blow up Oblivion, who nobody really knows this for sure. Meanwhile, the Smiling Lord of the Grim Legion, whom you can find more about if you watch my video on Wraith the Oblivion.
I only know enough about Wraith to know that I probably don't want to know more about Wraith.
Set off 2 nuclear bombs of its own.
Because he also had
Fat
nukes.
Man and Little Boy of Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were at the part of everyone has nukes and we're going to solve all our problems by nuking death. Oh, lovely.
Hiroshima fame. Over the city of Enoch, which is the city where all vampires originally came from, it doesn't exist anymore.
Because they nuked it?
Therefore, it has sunk to the bottom of the underworld, and it's kind of been pissing off the Stygian hierarchy for a long time. Those detonations then set off Xerxes Jones' bomb long before he was at the spot that he wanted to be at. Meanwhile, on Earth...
I'm pretty sure I made this joke last week. I'm going to say it again because it's funny. Premature detonation. I hear some guys have trouble with that.
Earth, specifically in northern India, a number of powerful Quajin, which are sort of vampire equivalents that are not actually vampires, they're a different kind of undead that dominate the Far East, were doing battle with...
Okay, here's the thing. I know the Quajin because I've heard it mentioned, I think in Brew Alpha Busa even, but I don't remember what they are. It's I think someone did explain it to me once, and probably in my Discord where you have a section about anything to do with Mage or Hunter or anything like that. I also remember it was really complex, and I had the dumb idiot moment of blah. My mind just blue screened after a while. Yeah.
With Zapatasura, the antediluvian ancestor of the Ravnos vampire clan. There were also other vampires and tradition mages involved. That's a footnote at this particular point in time. Why were they doing battle? Well, there was a war between the Ravnos vampires and the Quajin in India. India being one of the very central parts of the world, geopolitically speaking, and historically, it's always been a sort of clashing ground. But because the Quajin couldn't reproduce en masse, the Ravnos thought to themselves that they could win this battle by themselves mass-embracing young vampires, which then proceeded to die in droves, which sent sort of psychic shockwaves of pain through the generational bloodline of the Ravnos.
They do that?
All the way up to the creator of the clan, Zapatasura, who was laying in torpor in that region, and he woke up from that. This guy is basically a god. He is unbelievable.
So let me get this straight. They decided to out-baby the enemy, and then they out-baby-deathed the enemy into waking up their evil god king person who they don't want to wake either because any of the ancestors are always a bad deal. That sounds horrific, but it can also be explained along the lines of going, Mom, Mama, Mama, Mommy, 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 Mama, Mima, Mama, Mima, 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 Ma, 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 until someone wakes up and goes, what? And yes, that is a Family Guy reference. I think it is perfectly accurate to exactly how that went down as described in lore. So my only question is Seth MacFarlane a fan of this because he made that joke after this? Or did the writers for whatever the hell this part is, either Mage or Wraith or just White Wolf in general, a fan of Seth MacFarlane because they basically made that the plot line? And I'm actually leaning more towards Seth MacFarlane making this a reference.
Unbelievably powerful. And
Is
if
it
you want
related?
to
Probably
find out
not.
more
Maybe?
about him and those like him, you can check out my video on Vampire the Masquerade. The Technocracy saw this situation.
They're just watching?
And assessed it as a massive threat to humanity
Probably.
and the safety of human lives.
Yeah.
On account of that is exactly how you should describe this situation. I can think of no better way of describing it. So they used like neutron bombs, which are sort of magical nukes, to weaken Zapatasuda and also the Quajian who happen to be there, who were in their own right extremely powerful, let's be serious, and then destroy him with a big laser beam of concentrated sunlight that they created.
This is probably one of those times where it's magic, I shouldn't ask questions. But a neutron bomb almost sounds like a giant pile of nothing happened. Because a neutron laser would focus it so you can actually hit something, but a neutron bomb, neutrons are so incredibly small, millions pass through the entire planet. Hell, through you on a daily basis. And nothing will ever hit you for your entire life. The only way people are able to find out that they exist is when they go into a deep mine well that is incredibly dense with heavy water. I'm not really sure what makes it heavy, but it's been described that way, so whatever. And then they find individual particles that put off a tiny little bit of light when a neutron hits a water particle. And it's not common. Like, you have to screw around a lot to make that happen. So what they're basically describing is a pile of, oh, that's nothing. Oh, and Core Dexter, I'm talking about neutrinos, not neutrons. Oh, yep. No, that's on me. Neutrino, neutron. Honestly, I keep getting those two confused. Still, though, it sounds like a weird description, but also I just realized it's pseudoscience for the faction of literal pseudoscience. It's literally part of what they are. That actually makes perfect sense in hindsight.
Created by realigning the orbital mirrors that they have. In other words,
they have orbital mirrors.
The Technocracy was kind of a little bit distracted. These three events coincided, and because they all happened at the same time, like a line of causality in space opened between them, and the immense energy released by these things created the dimensional anomaly. Known in the underworld as the sixth great maelstrom, arguably the strongest of them all. It also sort of cracked open the vaults of hell and let demons out, but let's talk about that some other time.
Oh god, there's more?
Shook the entire supernatural world to its core. It really fundamentally shook up all of the powerful magical institutions. And most of all, it shook up the Technocracy, upended it, really. Except, and this is crucial, for the fact that it's not clear whether or not the dimensional anomaly happened at all. By which I mean the dimensional anomaly definitely did or didn't occur in your given chronicle in a certain way or other. But whether or not it happened, how exactly it happened, what it entailed, whether it's still happening, that's not actually definitively defined within World of Darkness lore. If you read the Mage 20th anniversary books, you will find that there's a lot of sidebars that talk about, oh, this is how the situation would have played out if the dimensional anomaly had happened, and this is how it would have played out if it had not happened. And then
wait, they're actually playing with it happening and not happening as defined segments? Oh, they're Schrodinger it. Oh. Also, Pylo, neutron bombs are a real thing. Actually, they are nukes that emphasize the radiation part. Yeah, because I was thinking neutrinos, not neutron, because a neutron is just part of an atom, isn't it? Yeah, that's on me. I've made that mistake multiple times with multiple videos. I don't know why. Oh, it's because they sound similar. My monkey brain just decides to pick up on half the word without reading the rest. Yeah, that would do it.
and various other qualifications. And all of the books offer various different scenarios and ideas that you can pick. Or, of course, as always, you could make up your own. There's a whole ass plotline where the technocracy has been infiltrated by Nefandi, which are like, oh, I hate the world and everything is bad.
Oh my god, good Charlotte fans. I stand by this sentence.
So I want to destroy everything because I'm so fucking edgy type wizards, and that's entirely optional as well. And obviously that's one of the cool things about pen and paper games in general, but also about World of Darkness in particular. No matter how much a lot of people would like to make you believe otherwise, there is no such thing as the World of Darkness. There is only your World of Darkness. With the sheer amount of contradictions and retcons that exist in this setting, sometimes within the same...
Honestly, just listening to a few seconds, it's not even so much there's retcons. Can you even retcon this? You're just saying, okay, here's a world where this is how it goes down, as opposed to the previous ones where it went down differently. And then we're going to give you the multiple options of other things that could happen. And I'm getting the impression that this is a bit of a complicated thing.
Edition of the same game, and like currently with 5th edition they're retconning pretty much everything.
How many editions are there?
You have to make up the world for yourself, and you are free to do that as you please. Whoever is developing World of Darkness cannot actually tell you how the lore is supposed to be for real. I would love to be able to present to you the real objective World of Darkness, but I can't. I can only show you my own, which is kind of what I'm doing.
So essentially, World of Darkness lore takes the idea that Games Workshop has is everything is real and nothing is real, and explicitly says, here are the two different options. Both can be as real as you want. We don't care. Have fun. Except they're trying to, but also they're failing to because they have done the opposite before. Okay, sure.
Personally, I like the middle-of-the-road approach to the Avatar Storm, where it did happen, it did cause an immense amount of havoc, and it did leave permanent scars on the walls of the world. But at this point, it has pretty much subsided, which of course doesn't mean that it's easy to cross the veil between worlds. It never has been. But if you prefer a different scenario, go ahead and use it. This goes so far that if you're like a vampire player sitting in front of your computer, on your couch, on the toilet, in your truck,
I was going to make a joke about how those are very distinct things. You should probably make sure to separate with more of a pause. So it doesn't imply that a guy has a couch toilet in a truck. But at the same time, I'm just thinking, if I had a truck bed with a plush couch toilet, that actually sounds like the most comfortable shit I have ever imagined. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Like, you imagine if you're just like sitting in the back of the truck as it's going down like the road and there's a beautiful sky and no one around. And you're just going like, yeah, oh, there's a good one. Oh yeah, great scenery too. Just, it's so disturbing. I'm almost assuming someone has done it. I live in West Virginia, so there's probably someone within 100 miles of me who has done this. And now I'm just disturbed. Yep, let's never think about this again. Also, Grim Reaper, you mentioned. Anyone here heard of the game called Raven Watch? Nope, can't say I have. It's a roguelike where you play a twisted fantasy characters making Red Riding Hood a werewolf. Oh, that actually sounds pretty cool. Also, I just like roguelikes in general, so I might check it out.
Wherever. Thinking, hang on, there is a what? And it has access to what? Jesus Christ, the Second Inquisition is the least of our problems. You can run a Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle where the technocracy doesn't exist, or mages at all, or ghosts, or werewolves, or fair.
Oh yeah, because each setting, even though they can incorporate, they don't have to.
Or where they do exist, but they work differently. You ought to communicate this, especially if it's going to become relevant, or if you have, you know, people who are experts on World of Darkness laws, like, by the way, this might become relevant, but it's not the case. However, I do encourage you not to get rid of the technocracy in your world simply because it seems like an overwhelming threat. Even if you are in fact worried that because vampires are very much reality deviants, the technocracy is going to show up and make short work of them, that's just because the technocracy is very good at its job. Most vampires don't know it exists at all, and the very few who do are probably worried about this exact scenario. But you might have noticed that it hasn't happened. It's all...
Yeah, that's one of the things I've always been wondering. They seem like there's so many different... Because it makes it seem like they're good at their job. Oh. I was going to say it seems like they're hyping them up for something they can't actually do, but... This is either one of those, they're kept separate because they're separate settings within the same setting, unless you want them to be the same setting or not. So pick your adventure style. But also maybe they're not competent enough to do it. Or they're just okay with vampires in the background. It's just something that keeps things generally in order.
all fine. They're not going to send a hit mark into Elysium when all the Primogen are there. Because not only are vampires pretty low priority when it comes to threats to humanity, the technocracy also prefers to be...
Oh, that makes sense. Because vampires need humans for food and they generally organize around them. So as fucked up as they get, they're not actually accurately described as an enemy because they're more just population control in the multiple ways that phrase is used. Huh. That's fucked up.
Be subtle in the way it operates, making as little noise as possible. Oh, a hit mark, by the way, is a Terminator,
Yoink.
like an actual, for real human-looking killer robot.
Wait, what?
That can tear through a minivan like
What?
it's made out of paper mache.
What?
And that has reflexes that make a housefly look slow and ponderous. That is a real, official, canon thing that exists in the world of darkness.
What? I'm sorry, they have actual Magick Terminators. And I'm also just realizing Bruv Alphabusa is explicitly using the technocracy in Norfolk Wizard game, which is explicitly part of the Hunt of the Parenting universe, which means there is a good chance Big D might someday involve himself fighting the Terminator. And I kind of love this. I don't think it'll happen, but it would be amazing. Ooh, so, oh, Maria, sup? I'm a Brazilian fan of you, and I came here to ask if you would react to a trailer for a game called Enigma of Fear. I don't know, because sometimes trailers are heavily protected by copyright claims, and on a stream that might be a problem. Because stream copyright claims are treated like strikes, not claims. It's a problem I've waxed poetic about more than once. Also, I'm a coward. If it's called Enigma of Fear, I would have a heart attack and die of sheer fright. Because I'm, again, said coward. Maybe. Sometimes I actually like horror for some reason that's moderately masochistic. I don't know. I have to know more about it first to see if I want to.
You'd need like a jacked up, battle-hardened elder to go toe-to-toe with one of these things. Except,
Yeah.
of course, for an operation like that, the technocracy would utilize at least 3 hit marks alongside a contingent of field agents, battle-hardened themselves, of course, equipped with plasma cannons that simulate coronal mass ejections from the sun. But they won't...
So they're also competent enough to say, hey, if we need 1, let's give 3 for overkill. And also literally sun plasma cannons. Which also would just be plasma cannon. Okay. Wow. And it's a puzzle game, Shadow Blazer? Oh. Was not expecting that.
do that because it's loud and expensive, and also because it wouldn't really solve anything. Vampires are affected by consensus, which believes that they're not real, and that's made life a lot harder for them in recent centuries.
Oh. Wait, really? See, I always thought they were outside of consensus because they're explicitly still active. But maybe that's why the Masquerade happens? But if they broke the Masquerade, wouldn't they become more powerful? Because people then hunt them down in Inquisition, yeah. But if they're affected by consensus, does that mean that they can face paradox as well? How would that function on them?
centuries. But, and technocrats hate him, Cain isn't just a story, or, whoever is the thing that create,
Oh yeah, Cain was a
cursed
vampire,
Cain to become the
technically.
first vampire. There exists a reality beyond consensus, and, mages go there physically from time to time. And vampires, alongside with werewolves and fairies and all manner of spirits and ghosts, are the consequence of things that exist anchored outside of consensus within the objective reality beyond consensus.
So
Very
two worlds.
irritatingly, for all kinds of mages, they get their own mini consensus that protects them from paradox backlash for doing shit that is objectively impossible. Consensus is actually an extremely complex and multi-layered phenomenon, no matter how much technocracy propaganda would like you to believe otherwise. This is why even
I definitely don't know nearly enough about the setting because I didn't even know as much as the technocracy put out for population control there, or propaganda. So, so it's layers of consensus with a general consensus for most people who aren't magical, but then similar magical consensus. So, what would you need for the minimum amount of players to say you have made your own consensus about bullshit happening? If there's actually rules on that, I'm going to laugh my ass off because that sounds abusable.
Even if the technocracy entirely devoted themselves to destroying vampires, they wouldn't be able to do it. All they can do
Because
is
they
limit
exist
the
outside of
damage and focus
consensus.
their resources on dealing with much larger existential threats. Plus, they'd rather create a new resource, something to be utilized to pursue their own mission, rather than create a new enemy. This manipulation of assets outside the technocracy
So they
is
manipulate
what agents
vampires.
call attunement. And it can happen in many different ways. Flashing a badge, extending a helping hand, sowing conspiracy theories, making overt threats, paying someone money. It's crude, but it works. Think about this. What is the major social edict, the main one in vampire society? The one rule that not just the Camarilla, but also the Anarchs and even the Sabbat that fundamentally disagrees with this idea respect. It's the Masquerade. The thing that's literally in the title of
Vampire
the
the
game.
Masquerade,
Make
yeah.
sure humans don't know we exist. You think this is an accident? If so, it happens to be a very convenient one.
Because if they break the Masquerade, they become enemy number one and easily fought. But also not ever destroyable, but they don't need to destroy them, they just need to beat them. Also, Dante's mentioned in the chat, a single town that believes in faith. There we go. I can't speak today. Face heal. Yeah, they're healing faces. Could be its own consensus, so it works. That low, because single talents that are faith healing based, oh, there's the word, is not a very large amount of population, so that's doable. Also, I just realized he has a wood play button over here. That's kind of awesome.
Technocracy is, of course, highly suspicious of vampires, but they do not, as such, currently consider them a major threat to consensus. Some of them even quite like them precisely because they have the good sense to clean up their own messes.
Yeah.
If the Camarilla stopped being the predominant vampiric society, that would be a problem for the technocracy. So they can pull strings, they can move things around a little bit. And look, whenever there is vampires that do really step out of line, the situation can't be contained even by the Camarilla. There's always the Second Inquisition, not nowadays in the new law, but also, why not? And part of the Second Inquisition are affiliated with the Technocracy. Other parts of the Second Inquisition, Technocracy probably doesn't like because those are also reality deviants. Seriously, hunters give the Technocracy big cluster headaches. It is much easier to just sit back, not necessarily relax, do other things instead, and just keep an eye out on vampire society. And maybe then when something like Zapatasura Awakening happens, you step in and do something.
So they hate hunters even more than vampires because vampires are usually quiet and hunters are loud, brash assholes who are literally flailing in the dark. Oh, why am I getting the impression right now that this is a reference to things that will probably come up in Hunter the Parenting? I can see why this was something I was told to watch prior to it being recommended last week. Yeah, I can see this being important.
Shit, the Technocracy even will work with vampires, even other mages who are reality deviants, if it doesn't interfere with their mission and they think they can come out on top of that interaction. Management doesn't like it, of course, so you'll have to keep your fingers crossed and pray that they don't argue with the results, which I just incidentally keeping your fingers crossed and praying for a certain outcome is also reality deviance. So
Because it also could work if enough people believe it. Oh, wow. This is awesome. I love it. It's literally just feels like 40K, but on a single individual human level and slightly less depressing.
And usually, not even the night folk way beyond vampires don't
Night
even
folk?
know what they're dealing with, that they're dealing with the technocracy. And that's a good thing. Acting unnoticed, getting in and out without a trace, cleaning up messes and never making any of your own, that's like half the training program of the technocracy. They need to be subtle, always intelligence focused, learning everything there is to know about a target before taking precise, surgical action where they can control as many factors as possible.
Because then they're making less noise and less reality deviance. Yeah, that makes sense.
Wouldn't believe how often Second Inquisition activity is actually just some NWO black suit who got careless. The majority of the operations that the technocracy undertakes are in fact focused on convincing the general public that no, there are not, in fact, monsters hiding in the night. Which can be surprisingly difficult when there's, like, claw monsters and fang monsters and tentacle monsters pushing themselves through the rips of reality in
And then sometimes they even leave New Jersey.
the age where everyone has a camera on them at all times. Several cameras even. Look, this one, it has 2 cameras. Why does it need 2 cameras? It has another one in the front. Why does it need that? Because
I mean, now he's just stumbling onto the absolute mad lad realization that the cameras are a scam. Most people will find one they like out of all of them, and the rest are useless. Yeah.
we can do it. We're very good at this technology now. But it is, of course, essential to keep people in the dark about this, because if they found out the truth, it would completely upend the technocracy's mission of creating a safe, one-size-fits-all consensus. A lot of monsters have disappeared because people stopped believing in them. The press...
Wait, really? Ooh, actually, that's kind of fascinating. I wonder if he's going to go into which monsters have disappeared. Maybe not with this video, but there's someone has to have covered that. What enemies are now on the, I guess, other side of the world or doesn't exist anymore because belief was actually fundamental.
The process of creating this unified global consensus is called terranorming, and it is actually
Terranorming.
immensely complex as an operation. You see, the technocracy doesn't just get to dictate reality. They don't just say, this is what it is, and then everyone believes it. It subtly manipulates what the masses believe because it is essential that they actually believe it. Can't just be something that they heard the authorities say.
So it's not even a matter of, this is the truth, believe me. It's working with what you can make people believe to eventually get to the point where they all believe it. So the frog in a pot metaphor, which admittedly is stupid because an animal that is in a pot and thinks it's suddenly too hot will just get out. It doesn't stay in there and ignore it. But the idea is the thought experiment of, if you put a frog into a pot and slowly turn up the temperature, that they don't notice the individual change because it's too slow, they will boil without being realized of it or being aware of it. So they're basically doing that, but with reality normative. So it's like, okay, well, reality like this is one way, but it's actually a step removed, and just slowly getting people to believe each step by step until it all becomes normal, or what they decide normal is. But with the problem of, there's a lot of places where it probably doesn't match up just yet.
Need to believe in that authority. It is a delicate art of Overton window manipulation, and the easiest way to get people to buy into their vision is, of course,
Mass
to
media.
make that vision be something that people respond to positively, something that they can gain something out of.
Really? Honestly, I thought the easiest one would be something negative that they just feel anger and absolute obsession with. Wow, I wasn't expecting to be more negative than the technocracy. Fun.
To popular adage, the masses are not actually stupid, and they're actually quite as
Disagree. Disagree completely. Just keep in mind what average intelligence looks like. Yeah.
astute at noticing when the situation at large is not really set up in a way that is particularly beneficial to
People walk into potholes because they ignore them all the time.
them, it is entirely within their power to reject the reality that the technocracy has manufactured for them. One of the places where this is tremendously illustrated is actually currently post-revolutionary Mongolia, where the technocracy has kind of the grip has slipped, let's just say. A lot of people have gotten back to believing in old or sometimes even new worldviews. So there's a lot of superstitionism, a lot of tradition mages being rather powerful out there on the steppes. Though, to be fair, it is one of the few places where the technocracy is losing the battle against reality deviants. The main incentives that the technocracy has are, of course, safety from mostly things that they don't even want people to believe in, but still the abstract concept of safety from whatever ideas people have about danger that are like intrinsically tied to monsters. Living conditions, of course, everyone wants good living conditions. And tied to that, of course, the wonders of technology. Now, we've actually talked about the efficacy of technology as a magical focus before in my video about, regular mage, when we talked about the virtual adepts and the Society of Ether, both of which...
The what and the what? I gotta remind myself that this is multiple videos into probably a series this guy has done. The Society of Ether? I mean, they talked about having freaking Terminators, man. So yeah, sure, why not?
Are breakaway factions from the technocracy. But yeah, you can use technology to do pretty much anything that is unbelievable, which conversely also means that just because you're doing something through technology doesn't automatically make it...
Oh god, they are literally the joke from Girl Genius that any sufficiently analyzed magic is science. Or any... And just like the initial, I think it's Asimov quote of any science that is too advanced becomes magic. I'm butchering it, but it's essentially the same thing.
Believable. It will not inherently protect the caster from paradox because it is not inherently necessarily part of consensus, just because current consensus is, thanks to the technocracy, technology dominated.
So it's literally the reason why Terminators aren't everywhere, because no one believes it's possible. So it actually would paradox away actual science. Because science would also be part of the magic. I love it. These guys are literally intentionally deluded for the best possible reasons. I kind of love this.
If I get a teleporter pad and put it out in the middle of the park and use it to beam myself to a space station, that shit don't fly. I mean, it also, even if it works, it don't fly. That's the point of it. You go up there without having to fly, you teleport. But the point is the reality police won't like it. And that is why, when the technocracy really needs to do that kind of thing, they do not do it in the middle of the park. Even though you might think intuitively that that would be a great way to demonstrate that that kind of technology exists. It isn't actually. It is way too on the nose to do terranorming with it. Nevertheless, we have all kinds of technological marvels and procedures that are commonplace today, and which would have been rejected as utterly impossible just a few decades ago. Yeah. Introducing all that cannot simply be a matter of showing it off and hoping that people will believe what they just saw.
I mean, for example, if you had seen something that does 3D printing as a models like this one... I can't speak today. Yeah, this thing. Just printed it out, just glued it. Pretty cool file. And multiple parts. Looks great. Looking forward to painting this one and seeing how disturbing I can make some of the missing flesh bits on it. If you had shown me this and the stuff it could do maybe a year ago, I'd be like, dude, that's insane. And I still think it's insane now. But if I had seen it when I was 5 years old in the 90s, I would think I'm looking at magic. And which is probably the entire point of what he's saying, because if it's too far out of what you think science can do, it's magic and it breaks the normative, so you think magic might be real. Yeah, that makes sense.
Technocracy doesn't even just hand out new technology to the masses. They have already developed it, but what they will do is they will guide scientists and engineers who are sleepers, or at least extraordinary citizens, to its own discovery, which in turn requires astroturfing people's beliefs into the viability of...
So it's not even that they're inventing it themselves. They're essentially acting as a muse for people who would not face paradox because they're not awake, and then discovering ways to do it themselves that are then believable by other people. Oh, that's awesome. Also, Siren, you're speaking of getting a 3D printer. They're on sale due to Christmas. We love suggestions on sites for STLs. Honestly, My Mini Factory and Cults 3D. Cults for individual models and individual files. My Mini Factory for big collections. They're awesome. There's others, but those are the two easy ones. Also, keep in mind if you're doing an FDM for more buildings or resin printing for more individual high detail toy models like this thing. Yeah. FDM, easy. It's fine. You do things. It has layer lines, but if it's small enough, it won't be a problem. FDM, that's easy. There's no cleanup. You just put it in. If it works, it works, but you don't really get miniatures out of it. Resin, be careful. It's toxic. There's a lot of safety procedure and it can triple the price of whatever you buy.
Of that kind of thing. And though the consensus is supposed to be unified, globalized, and universal across the globe, and it may often seem like it is, it's not. Like, it really is not.
Well, like,
they're trying to there's a blanket around the world, and they're trying to iron it perfectly smooth, even though the blanket is made out of an infinite patchwork of materials, and sometimes it changes in size, it doesn't really fit the world even, and it has holes too. Quite frankly, they've done an impressive job thus far. But even within the technocracy itself, they don't agree on what the consensus should be.
Oh, they don't?
Especially nowadays that we have this diverse, globalized technocracy that is making the attempt at reconciling the problematic shit it has done in the past.
Wait, they're actually trying to reconcile it? Really? I'll be honest, the more I'm hearing about this, the more I just want to hear a setting specifically for the technocracy and the internal conflicts of, hey, we did this horrible shit. Here are the monsters that were literally created. I don't mean that figuratively, but actual monsters created by things we did. Yeah, it's our fault too. That would actually be a really fascinating game, or admittedly, a fascinating book, because it would come with a lot more implicit character moments. That kind of sounds awesome. He introduced this entire segment as, here are the bad guys. And I'm just getting the idea of, these are the gooder guys who are not really great, but also they're generally benevolent, but not in the way that most people would realize or care about. But also the alternative was worse. I also just realized he has a ton of piranha behind him. I'm not going to ask. Let's just not ask that one.
Things are commonplace in parts of the technocracy that in other parts of the same technocracy would be considered blatant reality deviance. For instance, in America, you will get Hollywood physics at the outer stretches of the consensus membrane, where people they get shot, they keep on walking because they're just such tough guys, dodging bullets that...
Oh my god, they literally decided to do the man with the black hat from the Westerns where he gets shot multiple times and can walk through it, or the Matrix, like, I'm dodging bullets because of Hollywood. I don't even... Oh, that's actually awesome.
That's a thing they do. In East Asia, technocrats arrange their offices in accordance to the rules of feng shui.
Called it.
Commune with their ancestors at the temple. And as a matter of fact, for the Union's self-proclaimed rational atheism, a lot of technocrats are very religious. Parts of the organization have deeply religious roots. Not to mention, there is an almost spiritual reverence for the laws that are known as the Precepts of Damien, which are kind of like the 10 Commandments for anti-wizards. But no, the flowery language is just because the technocracy is kind of an old organization. There's no such thing as them feeling there's something mystical about those words, because there is no such thing as something mystical. But instead of getting into all that...
I know it probably just because he changed sections here and he put too long of a transition, but that actually is kind of perfect. Because it's like, oh yeah, there's nothing mystical, just giving you that little second. In fact, I kind of wish he had stretched out the transition a little longer, just to hear that little drop of the background music, which I didn't even realize was playing until that little stop. It was like, oh yeah, there's nothing mystical here. Yeah. That's it. I'm going to cut this one here. And not because my camera died for once, which is a nice change of pace. Yeah, we're going to ignore that part. I actually am really fascinated about this. But right now we're getting the baddish guys in the setting, who I'm kind of learning are ish is heavily emphasized on the baddish part. because they sound kind of fascinating. My entire experience with them up to this point is mostly in the Norfolk Wizard game, where I've partially heard about them because they are standing there when an alien may or may not be around. I don't know. It was weird, and I have no idea what's going on, and it kind of is making me want to get to it faster. I'm not even sure if I set that one up for today or not. I think I did, but I'm not sure. Either way, I hadn't left a like on the video yet. Wow, that's embarrassing. So if you guys haven't already, there's a link below to the video. Hit it up, and I'll see you in the next one. But just check it out. This was pretty freaking cool.